Aspen, thank you so much for coming on Mental Health News Radio.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Very excited.
So, we know a little teeny tiny crumb about you just from the introduction, and there's so much more to get into. So, let's talk a little bit. Let's start this off with how in the heck did you and I find each other?
It's always such a good question, and I know we've chatted about this a bit. I believe there are very few coincidences in the world, and sometimes the energy or the electricity of us just lead each other to each other. And I've been doing a lot of work on social media, just trying to get some voice out there around the imperative of healing. And as I've evolved, that message has become really focused on the imperative nature of healing and love and compassion, all these things. And I think you found me on one of my posts on TikTok, which the people
Yeah.
that come forward on TikTok, I'm usually like, who are you?
Right. Are
But
you a
it's
bot?
yeah, it just seems to be that beautiful energetic thread of the universe that brought us together. So again, so grateful to be here.
Well, I saw your beautiful face and I thought, I immediately thought, I trust this man so much, which seems weird just from a picture. But then you shared a little bit about your history, just a little bit about the trauma that you experienced, enough for me to go, oh, I'm really paying attention to this. So let's walk into what the heck you've been healing from. Let's start with when you started to remember how long ago that was, what had happened to you, and what that process was like.
I have a very interesting journey, and I think it is unique. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and um, over the years, I've lived kind of all over the world for a career. I had an extraordinary career as a chief technology officer for very large hotel companies. Most of my life, I've kind of wandered through life knowing that there's just something that's different about me. And remember, suffering through, chronic anxiety, a lot of triggers that I didn't even know were triggers then. But in July of 2022, things started to really unravel in me. And when I say unravel, I remembered nothing really of my childhood. As a matter of fact, it was very uncomfortable when I'd go camping with friends or hang out with people, and they'd all be talking about their teenage years or things. And I'm like, and I remember it actually, now I understand it being triggering, going, I don't remember. I never paid any attention to it because I had chosen a career that kept me very busy. And, I just looked for distraction after distraction. Um, but my mother had died, a few years before that. My mother was just an extraordinary earth angel. She still is with me every day. But as I started to try to find my way back to Colorado, I ended up, moving close to a location that I later found, but later understood and remembered was one of the central places of my abuse. And I ended up running from Colorado, and actually packed up my house and threw everything to my trailer and made my way to Georgia, and was staying at a long-term RV resort. And just a series of events were happening around me. Some things between my cousin and I that my dad brought forward. Some things that were starting to crack the egg open of something that I now understand is something called dissociative amnesia. And there was some event with the partner I was with at the time where there was, we had a big fight, and he got really angry. And I think he threw a vacuum cleaner through the window, and it just triggered me. And for whatever reason or however it happened, suddenly the egg was broken open, and I started remembering. And it started with some memories of things that happened at my school, Notre Dame, which was also our parish. And just the flashbacks were almost immediate. And I went into a state of total collapse. Once that egg was broken, little did I know that the egg was much bigger than I thought. As I progressed, I've never been in any sort of therapy in my entire life. I did come to remember through my dad's memory that I actually was sent to a counselor when I was in my teen years, and that's a whole nother story. But I'd never been in any kind of therapy, so I really didn't understand anything about this. And I also really never followed what was happening in the church, in terms of the entire crisis, the cover up and the scandals that they were involved in. I noticed it here and there, but as that started to occur and that egg broke open, my sister, my beautiful sister, just went and did everything she could. And as the universe works, some incredible, and I do believe in angels. I have to say, they dropped a lot of resources right in front of us, but one of them turned out to be a therapist that happened to be based in Georgia. I mean, how does that happen? That
Right.
was referred by somebody that was doing healing coordination in Colorado. I'm like, how did this happen? Well, you're in Colorado. I'm in Georgia. Why I'm even in Georgia is beyond me. Of course, I now realize that it was a function of fight or flight. But I got this incredible therapist, and um, I have never run to therapy or something like that so fast. I hate going to the doctor. I hate going to do anything that requires some sort of clinical office, and I actually understand better why that is now. Everything in my childhood was controlled as I look at it. But that therapist who did some, she was a licensed and certified therapist, but did something in quantum neural reset therapy. And part of that is pressure testing and going through year by year to identify if trauma occurred. And she had this really extraordinary process and she was very involved in other church cases, particularly in Baltimore. So she was very, very educated on what things look like, and she was very educated on hidden memories. And as we went through it, she was going through year by year, age one, age two, and we did this thing with pressure testing. And she came across to age 5, 6, and she said as soon as we said age 6, and she went through some additional processes, I'm feeling an incredible sensation in me now because I remember it well. She said, "You turned ghost white and nearly collapsed." And as she continued a little bit with me, her entire kind of disposition changed, where she became, I don't want to say startled, but extremely interested. And she, kind of sat with me as we got through it and said, in my entire career in dealing with hundreds of people that have been through this, I have never seen a reaction so profound. And as it turned out, that just cracked the egg and the memories started to flow. And it was so intense that I was seeing her, going to her offices, which were about an hour and a half drive from the campground, 3 times a week for 2 sessions a day. Because she said, this is big, whatever it is. And as we continued to go through the years and testing, every year of my life, I came up as a positive for something happening.
And
Again, I remembered nothing.
and Aspen, let me ask you this really quick, just so that people have a timeline. How old were you when you met her?
I was 52 years old. And so I think I've been 52 for a bit. And my sister, just being the angel she was and is out researching all these things. But Patty, one of my therapists, really said to me, the average age of derepression, remembering, or non-suppression, whatever you want to call it, because there's a lot of debate around what it should be called. But for men, the average age is around 52, is either disclosure or the memories cracking open. And in doing all the research now, I'm finding that is actually very common. Midlife, whether we come forward for disclosure or we come forward because we just remembered, it was pretty profound that I just matched that. So at the time, I was working as a chief technology officer remotely, and I traveled a lot, so I was a very busy person. The collapse was unimaginably difficult. I changed into something I couldn't even tell you. And I remember the day the first memories came forward, and I went in and into a small building that we were living in, and told my partner this is what's happening. And I went to the closet and I locked myself in the closet and just went, this happened to me. And oddly enough, or as it was, I didn't remember any of the clergy or priests at my schools. I don't remember any of my friends, and I still do not remember any of my male friends outside of some very light memories of what they are. But everything started to come forward: the faces, the visions, the flashbacks, the somatic memories. And my manifestation of somatic memories are pretty profound, and we could certainly talk about that later if we need to. But the key players, it wasn't just a priest, it was many. And that's where the memories became extraordinary and very, very confusing. It was every season, I was different ages. And as as it continued, I realized that I wasn't just abused a few times. I was a subject targeted for my abuse for very specific reasons. My family was very active in the church in Colorado. We were not a every Sunday go to church. It was an everyday thing. And it turns out, as the memories unraveled, the person that was our insurance agent was also the director of altar boys, and he's the one that really started my conditioning. I ended up becoming an altar boy far earlier than the church doctrine allowed. And we later found records that, showed one of the monsignors, the one that was, the one that started the abuse, was really instrumental in getting me to where I was at. And as it progressed, we ended up, my dad, still a devout Catholic, beyond a devout Catholic. We were 6 generations of Catholic that we know of. So, we have hundreds of years of Catholic blood in this. And my father came from a big family with poverty, all kinds of different stuff. But he is so devout, he said, you go to the church first. And we went to the church first, and they assigned an investigator. And that whole process is, in and of itself, a story. It was disgusting how it was handled. However, the investigator was an independent contractor and actually validated a lot of things that I was saying. Yes, I've heard that from other people. And then I got introduced to another survivor from this, similar hive of similar experience. But as it progressed, I started remembering more and more names, and I remembered more and more faces. And some to this day, I don't remember who they are. The list could go on and on. But the church obviously did really, kind of pulled the strings and do what the church does: block and tackle, engage legal, do everything you can to slow it down, discredit, etc. The archbishop of that particular diocese was not a very good person. I don't think any of them necessarily are, but we ended up having to go to a law firm. And in that process, they assigned a forensic psychiatrist to me who had deep experience in this type of thing. And, we went through, it was a very expensive engagement that, of course, we had to pay for to prepare for legal. But, she did all of the clinical things in addition to my therapy. And as we progressed through it, she was like, this was not a single, multiple, or single, or even, dozen incident thing. Your memories as they've been documented are coming forward, and just your physiological and emotional responses. My state of collapse was like, okay, this person was badly, badly abused. And as it progressed, we couldn't even really, of course, you can't, the way that memory works from that type thing, particularly when we're dealing with memory repression or fragmented memory, is that you remember bits and pieces, you get parts of the story. So I could say, I remember probably 5%, I don't know, 3% of my childhood, good and bad. But I haven't had enough of these flashbacks coming forward that I would process, and came up with a very specific way to work with my therapist to validate the memory. And it turned out hundreds of times I was, brutally raped, abused, ritualistically sacrificed, whatever it's called, hundreds of times. And we came to these conclusions as my memory started to come forward. That was every day. It was being taken out of class, that it was being done in the rectory. And I do remember, one of the things the investigator asked me is this Catholic investigator, which, by the way, broke every law in Colorado that the church had agreed to on how this process should work. It was nefarious beyond belief, and not really worth talking about too much, because I think everybody understands the church has a habitual pattern of this, the worst of the worst. But as he, asked me some questions, and one of them was, where did your abuse start? And I remember describing to him me being an altar boy, the youngest altar boy there, and that the priest had come to us, and some of the older boys had come to me and said, "Hey, it's going to be really hot out there. You should not wear any clothes underneath your garments." And of course, I was a very young boy. These were much older boys. Some of them are adolescents. I wasn't comfortable with that. And as I remembered, I was really confused, because I remember it was that year or the year before that the church received air conditioning. And it was very common. My dad still knows everybody in the church, and they all said the same thing. It was never hot in there. As a matter of fact, it was always too cold. The air conditioning system was, brand new, whatever it was. I realize now that those were some people that were, doing the bidding of a priest, saying, get this kid comfortable with it. And it was one of my most explicit and disturbing memories that really cracked the egg, of the priest taking me to the back, and after everybody had left, beginning the cycles of abuse there, telling me to take off my clothes, and starting with light touching, just a very, very by the book grooming process that, little did I know, I wasn't being groomed and conditioned for a couple of times. I was being groomed and conditioned for a career of abuse with the church.
Wow.
And so that really, really hit it. And then as he kind of continued, he said, well, as you were being taken out of class, where did you go? And I said, well, most commonly they take me to the rectory during my early years, age 6, 7, 8, 9, and often with other boys. And I hadn't been in that school or that church in decades. I hadn't lived in Colorado. I just always had kind of a disdain for the church based on their view on gays and lesbians at the time, and still to this day. But when I was talking to him, and I remember he said, "Can you describe the rectory?" I did, and again, this was something that was decades old data. I described the rectory to the T.
Right.
He was blown away. I described the desk that I passed. I described the look of the secretary that was the Monsignor's secretary that I passed, and I'm certain that she knew what was going on. I described the staircase. I described what the room overlooked. I described that there was wine there. I described what the bedding looked like, and of course described what happened to me there. And one of the things that I just found incredible, surprising perhaps at the time, but now I'm like, of course, is the rectory and the Monsignor's bedroom overlooked the playground. Gross.
Of course.
Um, and as things progressed, my sister did a lot of research on the multiple people that were out there that were abusing me, and they were all connected. They were all connected to something called Camp St. Malo. They all had stories of being abused themselves and became predators themselves. And then we came across somebody that was, just somebody that really, really got in and helped us. But the Monsignor that was involved in my abuse was involved in something that came up. A young boy named Bobby Bizep, who was not somebody in my circle, was murdered at Camp St. Malo. And apparently his skull was being carried around in a backpack. Not my story, but there's a lot of information on the internet. This was a big deal. I never knew about it. Well, it turns out the missing link was this guy named Monsignor Heister, which was the person who started my abuse, and he was wicked, beautiful in front of people in the congregation, charismatic until he turned around and you were the subject of his ire, the subject of his desire, and the subject of his intended abuse. He was a monster. As it started to unfold, all this data started coming up and boxes of things, my homework, all these different things came up. But my mom, before she died, had put together a book of photos, for me, and it was, as my mother would always do, it chronological and beautifully done. And there's one photo in there of my brother and I standing next to each other as altar boys, and there were no photos, maybe a handful, 3 or 4 photos in that book that had dates on them. My mother always knew something happened to me, always. As a matter of fact, come to find out later in life, she would ask all my friends, "Has Michael ever said that he was abused by a priest?" And
Interesting.
yeah, it just always, she knew, but she never put her finger on it. And also, back then, what would she have done? As a woman, as my mother, and also in an environment where we know that the church controlled everything. But she always kind of knew something was there, and I think she left a lot of evidence. But this one photo that I have, and I'll send it to you at some time, you can literally look at my face, and let me just breathe for a moment. I was horrified, as was my brother. We both looked like we had just saw a ghost. No, we saw much worse. I have memories of, things with my brother. He's got his own life path, so I'll let him deal with that. But it was so clear and obvious. And as my mom put that book together, I absolutely believe she was leaving me some clues for something that she hoped I would never remember. But it was all in order, and you could see the photos of me up until age 6 was a vibrant, wonderful, normal boy. Loved Star Wars, loved to play, loved to run around the lake, loved cars. Just was a beautiful kid. Um, and everything after that, all you saw was this disturbed boy. It immediately made sense of very tumultuous teenage years that I had. That was what some people would say out of control. It was a result of that I was constantly being abused. As it progressed, I remember many priests coming through our diocese. It was a revolving door of guest priests. And as we work with the law firm said, okay, first of all, we're not going to share about other people's stuff because we don't want to infect your memories. But they said, listen, the diocese was raided by the state police, and they literally caught the Denver diocese burning and shredding records as they walked in the building. Well documented in the DA reports. This is not new information. Everybody knows this is how nefarious it was. But as we got to the files for the priests that were involved, the ones that I had named, and I only named the ones that I wanted to deal with in the lawsuit, right? I was very careful. I didn't ever want to implicate somebody that wasn't there. Um, as we, kind of went through that, all of these people were interconnected, but there were so many people in and out of that parish, including a priest from Texas, a guy named Father Kenneth Roberts, who wrote a book called Playboy to Priest. Later to find out he had been in a psychiatric facility right before I was abused by him for pedophilia. And of course, this guy is I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's something called the Bishop's Accountability Report out there, which is a complete database of anybody that's come forward, independently done, etc. Well, this guy had many instances of abuse, and he was in charge of children's programs. Later, as I kind of understood, Notre Dame wasn't the only place. I was taken to Camp St. Malo a few times. Camp St. Malo I've met people that have gone through it. Some of the buildings have been destroyed by mud, blah, blah, blah. The church still owns it. It was a child ingestion facility. It was a place where people got abused. My brother actually had mentioned that he thought he went there and he couldn't remember. I do remember he went there. My dad went there as a child. But, a lot of people that went through there have horrible memories of physical abuse or, being approached or accosted. It turns out the acting head of the church at the time, the parish lead, I won't say his name, but a priest and a friend of the family, a good man, really good man, you know, agreed to meet with me. And we always thought it was weird because they took Monsignor Heister's names off the placards on the school before I ever came forward. Later to learn the school was vandalized right before my year that I was there because there were, what we believe there were boys that were abused and tore the place to shreds. But this guy was involved in so much abuse, and they could never pin the murder of Bobby Bites upon him. But it was so nefarious and connected. But it revolved first around in Camp St. Malo. I remember going back to Colorado and saying to my friend, and I don't know if this was a good or bad idea, but this was a person I was introduced to, another survivor, had a very similar experience to me. He had already been through the legal process, already settled with the church, but it was almost an identical abuse process, a lot of the same abusers. He wasn't involved in the missing link, which I called Monsignor Heister, but some of the other priests that came forward, which were far worse. It was almost like there was a priest that liked young boys, and then they would hand it off as he got older, and whatever happened. Well, he took me up there, and I remember I just walked into it, saw a building, and collapsed to the ground and started shaking. And he's like, "Okay, we got to get you out of here." And then I started remembering what the buildings looked like, and that were forced to do plays, all kinds of things, which we can expand on a bit as we need to. But it also turns out that I remember a couple of other things that I always thought were weird in my life. One of them had to do with a seminary called St. Thomas Seminary, which actually was also the diocese offices for some time. But I remember in life, I do remember being taken to St. Thomas. I didn't remember the abuse, but I always thought it was unusual. My dad and I have rarely seen eye to eye on social things or political events, etc. He was not happy when I came out of the closet when I was very young, again, a devout Catholic. But I always thought it was odd that I remember being taken on tours at St. Thomas. Come to realize now it was by the priest that had abused me, saying that you have a path to God, etc., etc. I was gang raped there. My first in a room in a ritualistic, wearing black cloak, satanic ritual of sacrifice. I was gang raped by 6 or 7 people. I remember being bent over a table. My feet barely touched the ground. And it was. I know that I was drugged, roofied, given wine. All these things were, as I looked through other reports, this is not uncommon. It's well known, but it
And
continued
your
to
story
unveil
is
itself.
out there on on the news. The case was very public, so this is not this is well documented what happened to you.
It sure is. And, in addition to the other survivor, his
Right.
was again very similar. And I don't want to mention his name right now, but he had very similar, in his case settled, and ultimately they settled we had multiple cases out there. They settled them. And the church throughout the process, gave us to believe that, "No, we believe what you're saying. We just don't believe that you didn't remember." Statute of limitations.
Wow.
So it was kind of like, fuck you. And my lawsuit was big. Here's the thing about me is I was 52 years old. I was in a celebrated career. I was a chief technology officer, heavily sought after. I was a powerhouse of information around cybersecurity, early adopters, and all these incredible technologies. I have never been unemployed in my life. And, of course, at the church tried to approach things, they called my employers and asked if I was, no, my employers were like, we want him back. It was, I had a fruitful career. I made good money. I was 52. I was in the final stretch of my career where things were really coming together. I was interviewing for a chief technology role out of the hospitality industry that was substantial money. Had I continued on my path in 3 or 4 or 5 years, I would have been able to retire early. That's the path I was on. Due to the trauma, I was not good with money. I was
Right.
trying to fill holes, buying cars, buying friendships, all kinds of different things. So I had very little to show for it. But there was no reason for somebody like me to walk away from a career I took decades to build. I was well respected in the industry. I was somebody that other hotel companies or other companies would call if they had a breach or a serious issue, or if they need to reinvent stuff. The accomplishments of my career were profound. I was good at what I did. My life was shit. Little did I know how bad I was suffering. I now, as I look back, and understand, oh my God, you were in bad shape. And you're doing a lot of things that were recreations of your abuse, but there was no reason why somebody like me would walk away. Well, as the memories progressed, another facility turned up because I was very confused why there are these two different buildings. And another one was called St. Andrew, which was a seminary of sorts. I believe it was a high school seminary. The church is very clever in the way they deal with things. They tore down two of the buildings, but left it. I believe it was run by the Vincentians. Then the memories of that location started to flow, and that location was a child pornography production center. End of story. There was a dark room. There were so many boys coming in throughout it. Little did I know I had been groomed to make boys more comfortable. If you will, almost recruit boys. I have no shame. I forgive myself. It wasn't my fault.
What could you have done in that environment? My God, you were trying to survive. And if you're told you're a kid, you've been systematically groomed in every way possible, there's no way as a child that you could have been held responsible for what you had to do in order to survive everything, including other children that were brought into this, because you were groomed to do that. That's, I think, what I want to get across to people
I was
that look at
programmed. Yeah,
this. Absolutely
yeah.
programmed. Exactly.
And there's so much talk about conditioning and grooming now, and it happens in so many ways. And sometimes we condition people, or people condition people, and it's not something they intend on doing. It's just part of it. If we read about narcissistic abuse and grooming and conditioning, it's not
Yes.
necessarily pre-planned. This was systematic and pre-planned. And I'm going to share with you some of the tactics had to do with lights, water, sound, hypnosis, and electroshock therapy. I would remember, as I'm sure you're very familiar with what somatic memory looks like. The body remembers stuff.
Yeah.
I would shake like this, and it would eventually, your nervous system will determine if it's safe enough for you to have the flashback.
Wow.
You're going to have this. You're going to have these somatic recalls, and my somatic memories were so bad that I would bleed from private parts because it would almost be the predecessor to the flashback. I remember one time I had an incredible toothache, and I just came out of nowhere, and I went to the dentist and said, "You cannot have a toothache there. You had a root canal. It's just not possible." And then hours later, the memory of being punched several times by one of the priests. And this kind of leads back to your question. What if I wouldn't have done what they told me to do? First off, they were very clear. We will kill you. We will kill your family if you tell anybody. And it wasn't even just tell anybody. I remember being told some things that were just nasty. And my body had confused them. But as the memories came forward, they were so incredibly vicious that they not only said, if you tell anybody, but you better look like you're liking what we're doing to you. You better not as much as show a tear walking out of here because we don't want to get caught.
Jeez.
They got their hooks in me. And again, this is all you know, I never had to go in front of court. Of course, we settled out of church. I had to go through some depositions, things like that. But this was also in this other survivor's case who remembers vividly these things as well. As a matter of fact, he's reported to me that his photographs were stored on some removable media and intercepted on their way to the Vatican. You know, I never saw those, but I have some very disturbing photographs of things that were being done there. But it was almost, and I remember saying to even the Catholic hired investigator, we were being bought and sold like cattle. And he stopped and he looked at me and just went, I have heard that from so many other boys. This is a guy that worked from the church, and I actually do think that he left. He was not pleased with what he was doing with the church, and so he left me a lot of clues. And you know, he went and interviewed some of the living priests, a guy named Morano and et cetera, who denied it. And he said, no, 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 we know he's lying. And these are also people that were all in DA's reports. Many abused many boys. And many of the boys they abused, they raped many times. And again, all, you know, credible witnesses by DA reports or the church's own admissions, or via the legal process. And you know, this is what is so hard about institutional abuse, and specifically institutional abuse within the Roman Catholic Church, who is just so corrupt that they have to cover it up instead of just deal with it. Is that, you know, bad things happen, right? Had the thing been done properly, you know, maybe I would have been raped a couple of times. You know, and that sounds weird to say that, but a lifetime of rape.
Right.
By the time I was a teenager, they had me in bathhouses, massage parlors, etc. It was not just, you know, photograph photographies. Video was introduced. I was being, you know, prostituted out of bathhouses in Colorado. Oddly enough, I think Colorado had 5 bathhouses at the time. It was a very small city for a long time ago. And I was trafficked to some other states. And, you know, I don't know if we'll talk about that today, but I ended up, by the time I was a teenager, being hypersexualized, you know, beyond a doubt. I was, you know, turning tricks regularly. My sister has memories of me, you know, running around town with her and going into very strange buildings and, you know, all kinds of very strange stuff. And I do just remember, you know, through my life being sexualized. And I do remember a lot of other things. I ended up fleeing Colorado the moment I turned 18. I confronted one of my abusers and said, I'm going to say this in a way that I can, is uh, through the process, I think I fell in love with one of my abusers. And you know, you know, that's how he manipulated us. And you know, I think finally I must have come to my wits or what have you. And I do have the memories now of being in a private apartment with him and telling him I was going to leave Colorado and that if he doesn't leave me alone, and he tried to kill me. I do remember the abuse being so bad in the course of my abuse, being resuscitated many times or being shaken and brought back to. That's how bad the abuse was. The things that I witnessed them do to other boys. And if you were in the highly conditioned ranks like myself and a couple of the other survivors I've interacted with, you know, it's almost like we were their property. And if you didn't do what they told, or you didn't, you know, uh, uh, act in a certain way, they wouldn't only beat you up, they beat your friends up. They were just wicked. My Monsignor Heaster had a German Shepherd that he would sick on people at Camp St. Malo. I mean, it just went on and on. And you know, again, these are all things that, you know, have talked to my law firm about and all that jazz, but I'm not the only account of it. You know, so the impacts of it, I can't even. It was extraordinary. I was taken out of class a couple of times in high school. I got, when I turned after 8th grade, I remember my mother saying to me, "You want to go to, you know, the Catholic high school?" And I do remember saying to her, I never understood why. I just thought it was because I didn't want to go to that school anymore. Well, I understand now why. I told her, if you send me to high school, to Mullen High School, which is Catholic high school, I will blow the place up.
Hmm.
This is a 15 year, sorry, probably a 12-year-old telling her mother, I will do something horrible if you make me go there. Of course, I ended up going to public school. Well, that did not get them away from me. One of the priests used to wait in the parking lot every day, and it turns out I would sneak out of my house at night. I was in chat rooms. The priests were, you know, back in the day when we had AOL and CompuServe and all that stuff. I was receiving instructions in chat rooms of what to do, and they were pimping me out. I'd sneak out my back window of the house and go meet them on the other side of the lake at this meeting spot, and whatever transactions were happening there, it just went on my entire life until I fled Colorado. And I fled Colorado, Los Angeles, not knowing that I had been trafficked there before, and ended up being in some teenage porn, which I've never been able to get my hands on, but I do remember the
Out
studio.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And not interested in necessarily finding it. I don't need to know about it now. But when I moved to LA, I just, ended up, being surrounded by a lot of interesting people, a couple of which I now remember being clergy. But I just did what I knew how to do, and that was be a hooker. And I met this beautiful friend of mine when I moved there at 18, and we didn't talk for some time after I left LA. I only stayed in LA for about 6, 7 years before I cleaned up my act. I became very badly addicted to drugs, crystal meth, you name it, I did it. And was turning tricks, all kinds of stuff. But I ended up leaving. But I connected with her a few years ago, after my case was filed, and she said, Michael, you don't remember any of this? And I say Michael because I remember me by Michael, but uh, uh, you don't remember? You always had wads of cash. You were always felt like you were running from something. You used 3 or 4 different names. Trevor, Tyler, this, that, the other. And I now, remember that I was using those because I was afraid they were going to come kill me. Um, and yeah, they watched everything. They followed me home from school when I was a kid so many times. It's just crazy. But, she was like, yeah, you were involved with a lot of really weird things. And I said, I don't remember any of it. How
Some
do
of
I
it,
not remember it?
yeah, and some of it too with the changing of the name. It's almost like I look at it through kind of a neurodivergent lens because I do name things as well, and so do people in my family, and my family has had that same, grooming at a young age, sexual abuse at the hands of a parent, all of those things. Sometimes the name is another way for you to run. It's like everything that happened in the container that was this name, I don't want anything to do with anymore. And so I'm going to go over here and have it here. So it's that, and it's also the psychological component of it as well because of the things that you had to do because look at what you were trying to contain. You were trying to keep yourself from those memories.
What you said is just beautiful. The things that our extraordinary body, mind, soul, nervous system do to help us survive. I
Yes.
was a child. I know I'm a feisty Sagittarius, Italian. Okay, I know I'm a strong person. Blah blah blah. But I do absolutely know and remember all the other boys. A lot of the other boys would come to me when they were wounded, when they were scared. I remember telling boys, whatever they're going to do to you now, just pretend like you're enjoying it, or they're going to beat the shit out of you.
Right.
And I remember many times raising my hand as a child, going, "Rape me."
Ugh.
That kid's not going to be able to handle it. I don't want to share anything horribly graphic, but I remember the things that priests would say that were disgusting about how much they love fucking little boys and how they loved passing us around. And of course, the sexual damage, all the damage that was occurring. But this was a boy that had to fight to live. My life was in danger so many times. There were times because of what they did to me in rape, I lost a lot of blood. You do the math. And I remember the priest looking at me and throwing me a towel and say, "Clean yourself up, you little shit, and go home." And, but the conditioning and the grooming that we've talked about a little bit, this was systematic. This was meant to do what it was. I remember being hypnotized. I remember every tactic they did to confuse us, and then realized that part of their process of electroshock therapy, they would put us in this little room to make us watch videos of strange images, like people that I didn't know. And I think it was an effort to confuse our minds so we didn't
Absolutely
remember it was there.
psychological terrorism. I mean,
Psychological terrorism, and I remember vividly this black room. They put us in watch. Then, as my memories progress, you know how memories work; they unfold. And your body will determine if it's safe to see more. Is that really the videos were watching child porn?
right,
And what did they want us to become? Pedophiles.
right.
That's the ultimate defense. Become one of us. These are sociopathic. I don't even know if the term sociopath, narcissist is appropriate. These are sociopaths, and there were so many of them.
Psychopaths and sociopaths, which of
all of
course
it.
include narcissistic personality disorder within that. Um,
Within that, I was reflecting on some things I've been writing in my book and talking about dimensions of healing and, all the different things that impact us, the science that we now understand in psychology, and realize that I'm a case study.
yes.
Of all of the different damages that people, do attachment injury, nervous system deregulation, structural dissociation, all these different buckets that the psychology puts things into. I was looking at it the other night and wrote it, and I had to stop and had a little quiet sadness. And when I'm all those things, it
Yeah.
fucked me up. It did.
The fact
But
that you're
here's the get
sitting here today and that you're able to share this story in the way that you are is a testament to, I don't know what, survivorship at a whole other level.
it's a testament to us understanding what we're worth.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a testament to engaging in healing. I walked away from my career. I was very lucky. I had a private disability program that gave me a small bridge, to get through things. But here's the gift in the process. It's so hard to say the word gift aloud. This is there was like a magic eraser following me my entire life. And it's called today, we call it dissociative amnesia. The events were so bad, my body would just fragment it, go away, go away, go away. I didn't remember anything. That's a beautiful thing
Right.
because I got decades and a beautiful career and a lot of beautiful life experiences and skills because the other, survivors that I'm aware of either didn't make it or ended up extraordinary alcoholics in prison, all kinds of different things. It's been very hard to find people because, it turns out most men don't want to talk, and I'm not judging anybody.
Right.
I absolutely understand why. But maybe the why is because I am willing to talk. I am not ashamed. I'm a gay man. Was I hypersexualized? Yes.
Yep.
Um, was I a hooker by a teenager? Yes. You know what? I was, and I was probably really good at it. And you know what? It does not define who I am today. But the choice to say, I am going to heal. And if you were to talk to any of my therapists, my support group, and there have been so many, a testament to the universe, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it out there, people appeared in my life, what I today call my healing tribe. I talk a lot about this idea of tribe in all of my work, my brand and everything, but it really came down to me choosing my tribe, the people that were going to be my friends. And going through the process of healing, you enter the process of healing with 20, 30 people you think are your tribe, your friends, your inner circle. If you walk away with three when you're done, because
Yes.
if you walk away with three, I remember my therapist had this little exercise. She said, I want you to do an art project, and I want you to tell me who all your friends are. And I got those little pumpkins you get. I think it was in October for the holidays, and I put together. I think I had a bucket of 20 pumpkins. I magic markered names on them and said, "This is my circle." And she's just like, yeah, we're just going to see how things progress. And as I mean, the pumpkins were disappearing everywhere because it came down to here's your tribe of people that are going to understand. And this is something I want people to hear out there. And so much of my work I want to revolve around this is complex developmental trauma and CPTSD for people like CSA abuse, things that happened in our natural development cycle. Do not underestimate the impact. My beautiful therapist, told me over and over, there's nothing wrong with you. It's what happened to you. Every day when I walk on the street, if I see a person that's homeless that looks like they're, pardon the term, cracked out or whatever, I don't say, what's wrong with you? How'd you get there? What happened?
Right.
So many times I've skated on the edge, and during the last few years, the journey of healing, oh my God, wow. What word did it take? Humility. The ability to say, none of this is mine. It's not my fault. But I have to deconstruct everything I know about me, rebuild it. And
Aspen,
here I am.
it's such an interesting journey in terms of why you were groomed so early. And it's because you read as unbreakable. And
You
you were a
just nailed it.
challenge. You were a challenge to break, right? And it's interesting to see how it turned out. You broke them.
You know
Not
what?
not completely, because that's a whole entity, that's going continuing on, but in terms of the larger picture of what's happening in the world right now, these things are breaking. But it's like you were targeted so young. Here you are, the youngest altar boy ever, and look at the positions that you were groomed into having to take over because you're unbreakable. And I'm not saying that being breakable is better or worse or whatever. I'm just saying you were specifically targeted for the very characteristics that helped you survive this.
Because I believe this: darkness hates light.
Yeah. And you radiate
They
light.
wanted they wanted my light. I do believe in what I believe in. I believe that there are angels, spirits, all kinds of beautiful things. I also believe in science. Like God is science, science is God, whatever it is. But they saw a resilient, beautiful boy that was probably going to, go on to do amazing things or whatever. And if it was simple as them saying, "We want to fucking suck the light out of you,"
Right.
and did they? You know what? They did a good job. But the only thing I would say to them now, of course, it would be interesting to see if I actually met a couple of living ones. I don't think that'd be a good idea. But it is this: is fuck you. I healed.
Right.
The justice is in the healing. And, I have a lot of beliefs on advocacy and the entire journey. But to me, the first thing is let yourself evolve into what it is that you want to be and do the healing work. And the journey of healing in and of itself, the legal process is a whole nother story. I'm, want to do a talk to people about how incredibly bad that is at some point, but it was destabilizing and traumatizing by design. I can't
Yes.
even describe it. But even the process of healing, when you're unpacking memories and emotions and understanding, oh my God, this is why I run from this. This is why I do this. This is why that I run to a bathhouse every time I'm triggered. This is why I do this, that, or the other. That process is triggering. Your triggers. That process is traumatizing. The process of healing can be traumatizing. It's this constant cycle. But as we really get into it and we embrace it and we again have that humility to go, you know what, this wasn't my fault, but I know that it needs to be addressed because I don't want to live this way. I don't want to be an angry person. I don't want to carry rage. I don't want to carry, uh, uh,
Shame
uh,
everywhere you go.
shame everywhere. And you know what? This is a testament to me. I am not ashamed of who I am.
Good.
I am not ashamed of sexuality. I am not ashamed of what happened to me. And I am very proud of the work I've done. And if I can help just a handful of people in a world that, is full of extraordinary events of trauma, horrible things happening to beautiful people, you know what? I was said once, and I mean, I never hesitate saying it, is I've had multiple people say, you lived through your own personal Auschwitz. And I went, yeah, I sure did. And I'm here, and I'm here to tell you, if I could get through this with the right support, and a lot of this, as I write about it, the right support is critical. Therapy can do damage. Therapy can be helpful. And I have a lot of data on it I want to share on what the right support looks like and also what daily alchemy do you create to embrace the process. Because I've certainly been in therapy before where I'm like, if I just do that, that's going to fix me. No, 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 no. This becomes a full-time career, the career of healing, the daily alchemy of healing. But what you become as the awareness evolves, as you suddenly become aware, oh my God, give me that pill again. It's beautiful.
The thing that strikes me, and I want to get into this too. There's so we're talking for like what, an hour. There's no way to go through this, but also you're writing a book, you're going to be doing a podcast, you're going to be doing you're already working as an advocate, so you're out there, putting forth the healing part of it. But the fact that you work with intimacy and sexuality and eroticism, the fact that you could go and claim that as a right that every human being has after what you've been through, that is yet another way that is profound.
Thank you. And that particular part of it, and I want to shout out to people out there. I'm an anomaly. I think because of what happened to me, I became very comfortable with sexuality, whatever. And I've met other survivors that are as well. But reclaiming one's body, regaining one's right, their divine right to pleasure, to
Right.
joy, to sensuality, all these different things, is critical to the healing journey. And there's a right and wrong way to do it. And I'll be first to admit, I don't believe I was ever a sexual addict, but I was, seeking out anonymous sex and all kinds of things that were probably not good for me at that time. I'm not
What
saying
the
it's
heck were
not good
you
for somebody
supposed
else.
to do? My God,
I,
you were
I,
groomed
I was
since an
doing what I was
infant. My
was
God.
was to I was doing what I was trained to do. But it is part of my nature to not be afraid of these things because they are what makes us human. They are what makes us beautiful. The thing in my healing journey that was profound when I was at Camp St. Malo, they used to have a shop, a leather shop, kind of like you would make leather wristbands and belts that would later be used to bind us. But the thing that I brought, I started doing was jewelry, and it just flowed. And my dad is a metallurgical engineer. He ran many mines in Colorado. We were surrounded by golden rocks and quartz and all these turquoise and all this stuff. My mother loved, Asian culture, Native American culture, and all these different things, which is embodied in me. I don't remember much of my mother. I just don't. Not from a child. But she lives in my jewelry. And so I founded Energy of Tribe because I strongly believe that there should be a token out there, if it's a bracelet or something for survivors. Also, I do believe in the magic and miracle and beauty of believing in something you put on your wrist that you wear. We make encoded jewelry, all kinds of different stuff. But I believe healing is so many things. It's multifaceted, it's multidimensional. And I want to take all of the things that I've learned and share them with people. And again, I want to be that beacon that's out there that says, I've been through some pretty, really, really bad stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, Healing and pain and suffering are all relative. So, somebody is smaller, if you want to call it smaller trauma, that's a horrible word for it, is going to impact them in a way that is profound. I have a high tolerance for traumatization, right? So, yeah, I built this thick skin, which isn't thick anymore, but the journey on it is important, and those are all the things that I want to bring forward, so people understand it's not as hard as it seems, but it is a commitment.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I love what you and I said privately another time. There's no ED after the word heal. It's ing. You are always going to be healing there.
It's a constant state of regeneration because the second you walk out your door, something's going to happen. It's not
Right.
going to be necessary, but it could be just the traumatization of being human. The human experience in and of itself is built for trauma. That's why they, whatever the engineers, architects, God that designed this beautiful thing that we live in, this incredible hardware and software that we are, gave us every mechanism that we need and technologies that have been around probably for thousands of years on how to reset ourselves,
Right.
much
Right.
like an animal does in the wild. There are functions and technology built into our beautiful existence, this beautiful creation that we are, mind, body, and soul, that help us reset ourselves from trauma. We can withstand more than we think. But I, again, cannot stress this enough to the world at large out there. It requires support. It requires qualified support, and it requires a commitment to living a little bit differently. And as it evolves, you start to understand why, and you go, "Wow, I wish I would have known this 20 years ago." But it's a constant. What is healing? It's chasing peace. It's trying to find peace. It's trying to
Oh,
find your wholeness. It's trying to find your identity. I didn't have an identity.
right.
It was
You were given
stolen.
many and none of them were
So so that
you.
so they think, but look at this now.
Yeah.
Somebody that's got a story, but somebody that also has a future, a lot to say, and a lot of love to give. I always tell my friends the thing that I want to be is a tsunami of love.
Hmm.
It starts there. Everything falls into place after. It's so cliche, but you go through these things, and in the healing journey, you realize that your beacon, your golden light is love. That's what gets you to the next day. And literally, along that journey, you fall in love with somebody really important, yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That journey back to self. If coming out of an institution that is all about othering and keeping you disconnected from self, and here you are coming
We
home
were
to
taught to
yourself,
give agency to everybody but
but
ourselves.
yourself. Exactly.
But my agency is mine, and I just have to, I look at me, I feel good and everything. This isn't how I always feel. There are days that are really bad for me, right? There are days that I feel deconstructed and just like, why the fuck am I shaking again? What is this happening? It's okay.
Right.
How could you not be that way with the type of neurological damage, the type of nervous system damage, the stored things that you haven't processed, the memories you don't know? I only know a fraction of them. But you know what? You take the good ones, you take the bad ones, but it continues to get better. You learn new skills to deal with it. And as you become more aware and develop an intelligence of your body, your mind, your soul, your nervous system, you find that you can actually manage through these things. I call it applied, being able to apply the skills that we needed. And applied nervous system intelligence is how do we know what's going on with us? And as you learn it, you start to become one with it, and it really does start to get better. It's not a race, and there is no beginning and end.
Right,
It's infinite,
exactly.
and it's saying it's not linear. It's chaotic, the healing journey, but it all starts to take form, and it starts with your simple choice: is I give in, I let go, I surrender to the beautiful universe, whether that's the universe that's in the heavens or the universe that's in your heart. You can do it.
Is that why you think the jewelry piece for you? Because you can wear it. It's your mother is embedded within this, your father is embedded within this with all of the metallurgy. And so you're wearing something that becomes a touchstone that reminds you when you're in those darker spaces that, hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here.
It's talisman, the jewelry, making the jewelry and all those things. Yes, it's a grounding tool. And, the way that I make my jewelry is I actually really strongly believe in, and we've been talking about for thousands of years, the energy of certain crystals and stones,
Absolutely.
whether it be quartz or amethyst or citrine or pyrite or all these different ones. Some of them are very powerful. My jewelry is very specific in that I put a lot of grounding energy in it. Certainly I want that powerful energy of citrine that's the merchant stone and can bring all this abundance. But the bottom line is for those of us that have been through trauma, we have really nervous system, really interesting nervous systems, very sensitive.
Yes.
Let's ground us. Things like hematite and all kinds of different things. There is, science behind it. Ground. Is it going to heal you? No. But if it's simply something that you wear and go, oh my God, A, it's beautiful. B, it spiritually means something to me. I incorporate a lot of numerology and other things into it. And I sometimes even channel when I do my custom creations for people. But it is really about being able to look at something and saying, I'm here, I'm now, and I am fucking beautiful.
Mm. Where can people find out how to have this jewelry? I need it for myself too. So where can they go to purchase this from you and support your journey?
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I will share a little bit about that. When I was young, I do remember dreaming to want to be a designer, a fashion designer. Of course, that never happened, and I ended up in technology. But that's
Well,
why
it
it's
is
so passionate to
now.
me.
It's happening
It
now.
is now, and Energy of Tribe. Energy of Tribe is my jewelry brand, and it's in Coda's Talismans. It's at energyoftribe.com. And I also have a personal website, aspenmichael.com, that is evolving into the story of my daily rituals, alchemy, things like that. Be talking about all kinds of different stuff. It's really my platform of advocacy and truth. But Energy of Tribe is my passion, and we make beautiful things. We have a lot of jewelry you can buy, right off the site, or my custom creations are very special. They're meant not only to be energetic and heavy in qualities, but they're meant to be sexy, beautiful, wonderful, and luxurious for us to wear. I always say to my friends that I come across, they say, "What's sexy?" I'm like, "Oh, a lot of things are sexy, but healing is sexy, and
Oh, yeah.
that energy is
Sense of
sexy.
agency is sexy.
You're knowing
Sovereignty is
yourself,
sexy.
being able to compassionately enforce boundaries,
Yes.
all the things that we learn is all sexy. That turn me on. Of course, all these other things do, but the beautiful gifts that we have around us in the world, we become light workers, beacons of light, leaders, advocates, all these different things. The world needs more of us. So if I
Yes.
can help people transform into something that is beautiful, that's what I want to do.
Well, that's what you
And
are doing.
just by healing and just by standing here, that is what I'm doing.
I'm
That's
so
enough
I'm
for
so
me.
excited about you coming here and listeners just wherever you are and listening to this. He's going to come here to North Carolina and we're going to get some minerals and some
Yeah,
things from here.
the first thing every morning I do is gratitude. I do a lot of practices in the Japanese culture to ground myself,
Yeah,
Qigong, all kinds of different things. But
necessary.
the most important one to me is waking up every morning and just reminding myself, I might miss a day or two, is thank you for this fucking breath today.
Yeah. It does help you crystallize everything down to moment by moment living. And that helps you when you go into a place of trauma, you're remembering something, your nervous system is completely out of whack. And because you know how to go zzz, and take it to
Yeah.
that. view. That's also part of, well, all of the ritual that you do too, to get through those moments because
It's a skill. It's a
it
skill. You got
takes
to
an
develop it.
extraordinary amount of effort to just, "Ooh, okay, I'm okay." Yeah.
It does, and in my journey, I've learned, meditation, breath work, all this stuff, and I remember being so afraid of it. Going, okay, if I'm going to be meditating, I'm going to have to look like the Buddha, right? You're like, no, 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 no. Hey, prayer is meditation. Silent, it's different for all of us, but
A
you know,
walk
ten,
can be prayer and meditation
a
at the same
walk can
friggin'
be
time.
meditation,
Yeah.
and 10 minutes in the morning of no screens, all kinds of different things. It takes a
Yes.
little discipline, but boy, you find the magic in it when you go, oh, this really has helped me bring down back into my reality. The last 3 years in my whole life, I have lived in a constant state of dissociation,
Yeah.
constant. And as I start to come out of it, you're like, oh, wow, it is beautiful out here. It is spectacular out here. So a lot of the things that I want to talk about and have conversation about are, what does everybody do to get themselves grounded? There's no right way or wrong way. We need armies of people teaching people how to do this. But, living in the here and now, it's not a perfect art, but it is beautiful when you can even achieve moments of it throughout your day.
You know what I think about too, just to kind of walk us through closing of this specific container of safety we created together to do this episode. The fact that you are creating things that will help other people on your journey, the fact that you are talking about this and having people show up out of the blue, out of TikTok, for goodness sake, somebody shows up. I mean,
Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it
just
beautiful? Wow.
all of that coming together for you. But here's what's interesting to me about that is right now what's happening. It's March 4th of 2026, right? There is a lot going on in the world, especially
Oh
around
my.
victims of sexual abuse, trafficking, all of these things that you've experienced. There's a convergence of people waking the hell up finally about these specific things. And guess who? It's not going to be the hierarchy or organizations that are going to help us now. It's going to be all the people that have been broken, that are not like my friend who has lived in and out of homelessness forever. I keep telling him, do you know who's going to be running to you in 2027 and 2028? They're going to be looking for
Yes.
you. You.
Yes, it's an army of beautiful light workers. This is the essence of collective healing. I didn't know what collective healing was before. And as I understand it, we heal the collective. We go out as people, as individuals, not looking to spread doctrine or anything like that. We are simply there to spread the beautiful energy and life force of healing.
And going
And
within and saying, it's not out there, it's right here.
it's here. You can believe in this beautiful ancient gods, whatever you want to believe. But you know
Right.
what? There's a copy of it was put here, and we can share that light one soul at a time, if it's what
Exactly.
it takes. And
And
I'm honored to be a part of it, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to meet other beautiful souls doing the work and wanting to share it with others like yourselves and so many that I've met. There are beautiful people in this extraordinarily difficult world.
mm,
We can make a difference.
thank you so much for agreeing to
Thank
do
you.
this.
No, it is my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. And look forward to doing many more because I got a lot to say
Yes,
and
you do.
a lot of love to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we will have you on again. And obviously, I'm a lifetime supporter now of whatever it is that you're
I love you.
doing.
I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
I
you. I'm
love you too.
Sagittarius. I'll take it. I'll take it. Stroke my ego. It's good.
All right, listeners, remember you can go to Aspen's website. It's energyoftribe.com. And please, join him on this journey, find out more about him, support his work. And Aspen, again, I thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Love and light and peace.